I heard a noise in the bedroom where my wife was folding clothes. And she said something. I don't know what it was. I heard her say something. So I started back that way to see what happened, what it was, you know. I made her about halfway down the hallway. And I couldn't really see. I was extremely tired. I hadn't been sleeping but like an hour a night for the past like 6 weeks. And she something cut me on the fingers, the two fingers. And from that point on, I don't know if I blacked out or what, but I killed her.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, the statement that you gave to a parole officer in June of 2022, about 5 months ago, you said an intruder came into your home and killed your wife. That true?
We are about to watch the commutation hearing of a decorated Vietnam veteran who was found guilty of taking his wife's life. This is a classic hearing that I played quite some time ago. About 5% of my subscribers have seen it, so I thought that I would play it again. We're going to see our favorite DA with a mic drop, and he is also represented by who I think is the most prestigious attorney with regards to parole and commutation hearings representing him. So it's going to be a hearing for the record book. With that, let's jump in.
All right, you're John F. Osford Jr. DOC is 126928. You're seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in August 1989 to a life sentence for a second-degree murder conviction in East Baton Rouge Parish. Mr. Osford, is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Roche.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, fellow board members. Before us today, we have John F. Osford, DOC number 126928. The applicant is here today seeking a recommendation, a commutation of sentence for a second-degree murder conviction in July of 1989. The victim in this egregious offense was his wife of over 18 years, Yvonne Elaine Hosper. She was 38 at the time of her death. Hosper was found guilty as charged by a jury of his peers, and the court sentenced him to natural life and hard labor at DOC without benefit of probation, parole, or suspension in sentence in August of 1989. Ironically, Mr. Hosper was out on bond 2 weeks after being arrested for second-degree murder and was not incarcerated until after his conviction. Mr. Hosper is currently 76 years old. At the time of the murder of his wife, he was 42 years old. He's been incarcerated for approximately 33 years. The applicant has a low risk assessment score. He's in minimum custody. He has a college degree, a Master of Operational Management. He has a residency plan in Holder, Louisiana, after he completes his transition with the Louisiana Parole Project. He has a good institutional record. His current job assignment is machinery maintenance 5. Mr. Hosford, tell us what you do as a machinist maintenance 5.
I maintain all our machines in the print shop.
And you've been working in the print shop for over 30 years, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hosmer has excellent work evaluation. And he has only 3 disciplinary write-ups in 33 years of incarceration. His last write-up was in 1994, some 28 years ago. Mr. Hosmer is a veteran of the U.S. Navy. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
Programs completed, 100 hours pre-release, anger management. That is the only program that I could see, besides that you are on maybe a waiting list for thinking for a change. What other programs have you completed in 33 years besides 100 hours pre-release and anger management?
I completed an air conditioned course.
Sir, what good time programs have you completed in the last 33 years?
That's the only one.
So basically, you've only completed 100 hours pre-release and anger management.
Yes, sir.
So you've been in the workshop for some 32 plus years?
Yes, sir.
Is your job concerning the printing machinery? Do you keep the printing machinery working?
Yes, sir. Maintaining them, the machines, printing presses and cutters, many kinds of machines. We maintain all those.
Great. Now, Mr. Hosper, we're going to have a conversation now. And I want, the most important thing to me today is honesty. I want you to be honest with your answers to my questions. And I want you to explain in detail to the panel what exactly happened that afternoon on December 16th, 1988, that caused the death of your wife, Yvonne Elaine Hosmer.
Yes, sir. When I came in earlier, when I first got to our house, my wife said, I need to go to the store for a few minutes.
Hey, 1 second.
Pardon?
Answer one question for me.
Yes,
You were in Tennessee on assignment with the Navy,
Right.
and you come home for Christmas, and you were going to stay in Tick Park. Am I correct?
No, sir. We were gonna I was in the process of leaving Tennessee, retiring, going through that process.
Right.
And but I promised the children that I would come down and we'd have a little bonfire. Go
Right.
have but anyway, that day,
But your wife had filed for a restraining order, and you were not supposed to be at the house. Am I correct?
no, sir. I don't have any knowledge of that.
Your wife did not file a restraining order on December 2nd, 1988?
Not that I know of. I was
Okay.
never aware of that.
Okay, continue. Okay.
Okay. So, I promised the kids we'd go have a little bonfire, roast some wieners, stuff like that, and just have a little fun, you know. I was very tired. I had been worried about my wife because there was a woman up there up in Tennessee, which I also believe she drove down to Baton Rouge. But she had been calling my wife, and I'm positive it was her. And my wife became scared. She had gotten a job working at night. So I don't know. I thought when I found out about it, I was upset. But and she wouldn't explain anything to me. But I think she was paying the woman off. I don't know. Or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, that night,
The husband, you said
Yes, sir.
the woman traveled from Tennessee to Baton Rouge. Did you know the woman? Did you have a relationship with the woman?
no, sir.
Okay, continue.
Okay, I'll explain that if you want. When I first went to work as a JOD,
Sir, let me stop you there.
Yes,
Tell
sir.
me what happened the afternoon of December 16th, 1988.
yes, sir. So my wife said, I need to go to the store for a little while. And she left, and I was there at the house by myself. So I waited around for her, and for those to come in. After a while, she came back. She was gone a couple of hours. She came back and she took some clothes into the bedroom, was standing up folding them up.
Sir, let me help you out. You and your wife were at the house. Your children came home, maybe one at a time. Your children came home one at a time because they were in different schools. And when all the children got home, you sent them to the van. Am I correct?
Well, when they got home
Sir.
later on, yes, sir.
Sir, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So
No,
what happened after you sent your children to the van?
No, me and my wife were in the bedroom talking. She was folding clothes when the kids came in. I told them to get in the van. I'll be there. I never went to the van. And we were talking, and the kids came in, and we're ready to go, ready to go. I said, okay, I'm coming. And I started to leave, and I asked her if she wanted to go with us. And she said, no, I have something I have to do. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow, I said. And I started down the hallway. It was kind of dark because we hadn't turned the lights on, and it was starting to get late in the evening. And when I got into the dining room area, the door right over there, I heard a noise in the bedroom where my wife was folding clothes. And she said something. I don't know what it was. I heard her say something. So I started back that way to see what happened, what it was, you know. I made her about halfway down the hallway. And I couldn't really see. I was extremely tired. I hadn't been sleeping but like an hour a night for the past like 6 weeks. And she something cut me on the fingers, the 2 fingers. And from that point on, I don't know if I blacked out or what, but I killed her. I don't know when I came back to realize what was happening, it was outside the patio door. She was laying on the patio floor. And I had a file in my hand. I threw it on the patio, and I reached down, and I see she was dead. And I picked her up, put her on the table. and I wrapped up as best I could and ran to the telephone to call 911. I didn't get a dial tone. So that's when I went outside to the van. I opened the back doors of the van, and then I got my son, my son Wayne. I said, "Come help me." And I couldn't carry it. She kept slipping. And we carried out, put her on the seat. Then we went for the hospital. And along the way, traffic was really packed. And I was trying to think where the hospital was. It'd been so long, you know, I couldn't really remember. My thinking wasn't very straight. I was tired. And my son on the way flagged down a policeman behind her van. He came up and asked what happened. I told him I think my wife is dead. We need to get her to the hospital. And he led us to the hospital, Hurricane Long Hospital.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, the statement that you gave to a parole officer in June of 2022, about 5 months ago, you said an intruder came into your home and killed your wife. That true?
Well, yes, sir. But I think what I just can't see my wife cut me with a knife. It was dark, like I say. I was extremely tired. My eyes.
How did they get into the house?
Who is that?
The intruder, the person that broke into the house.
I'm not sure there was an intruder.
Which you made a statement to that effect in June of this year.
Yes, sir. Well, I thought it was an intruder because I just can't see my wife cutting me with a knife. So
Okay.
I thought it was an intruder. I couldn't really see. It was kind of dark. And so.
I have some questions, Mr. Hosper.
Yes,
First
sir.
of all, there was a restraining order, and it was signed by a judge on December 6th. And that restraining order, and also she filed for legal separation. And in that petition that was signed by the court on December 6th, 1988, she said that she had been a victim of domestic. She asked for $300 child support for each one of the children and $500 alimony. You were scheduled to go to court to answer the petition on the 17th, 1989. That is a fact.
I've never heard of any of that.
So, told us this morning there was no restraining order, but that is a fact. Now, I have some questions. That copy of the restraining order was supposed to be delivered between December 20th and 25th, because you were scheduled to come home to take fall to live with your parents during the Christmas holidays. Why did you come home early than when you were scheduled to come home?
I wasn't going to live with my parents, kickball.
Okay. Next question. Why did you attempt 4 children medication after you got into the van?
I was trying to calm them down a little bit. So I'm trying to get my wife to the hospital. And it's just over-the-counter stuff. It's harmless stuff. And
Trying to get your wife to the hospital. Why were you driving in the opposite direction from Hurricane Long Hospital?
No, I was going down to Jewel Road. Once I got to Jewel Road, go over to Airline Highway, then back to the hospital. Like I said,
Why did you attempt to avoid the police when he tried to stop you when he turned on his red and blue light?
I didn't try to avoid the police.
According to the police report, that you did not stop, you went into a parking lot, you parked, you left again, and you did not stop until you got ready. All this information is in the police report.
But that's not true. When the policeman, when my son flagged him down and he stopped me,
Your son flagged him down because he was frightened for his mother. His mother was you tried to stuff his mother under the seat, which you
No.
couldn't see.
that's
Sir,
not true.
Sir, let me finish.
Yes, sir.
And your children were frightened, and they flagged down the police. You tried to avoid the police.
No, sir.
I mean, why?
When the policeman put on his light, I stopped. He came up there and asked me what's the problem. And I told him my wife is I believe she's dead. We need to get her to the hospital. And he led us down to the store, turned around, and went to the Hurricane Long Hospital.
Okay. Then tell me why you were bare-chested with no shirt, with blood all over your face, arms, and shoulders.
I wasn't bare-chested. I had a shirt on.
Your children testified that you took off your T-shirt and you were wiping up or trying to get the blood off the floor in the house. And everything that was in the house when the detectives went over was saturated with blood, and there was blood all over the house. And your T-shirt that you were wearing was saturated with blood.
Yes, sir. When I picked my wife up, I got blood all over me.
So you're telling me the police report that says that you were bare-chested with no shirt at the time you stopped was incorrect?
But that's not true. I had a shirt on.
Okay. Now, your wife was shirtless and braless at the time the police stopped you. Why didn't your wife have any clothes on her upper body?
She had a shirt on.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. The opposition in this case comes from the 19th JDC District Attorney's Office, who is strongly opposed to any clemency in Mr. Hospital. DA Kenyon Moore submitted a very strong letter in opposition. The East Baton Rouge Parish law enforcement community is adamantly opposed. Members of the victim's family is adamantly opposed. The offender's children are vehemently opposed to any clemency for their father. You have my sympathy. I understand that you lost a son, Wayne, in Afghanistan. I'm sorry about the loss of your son, but your other three children voiced their opposition to you receiving clemency. There are letters of support from two family members and over 15 or 20 letters of support from former military friends and associates. We have multiple letters of support from supervisors of the print shop and the toy shop. Mr. Hosford, is there any other program that you'd like to mention, organizational activity or community service that you performed during your 33 years of incarceration?
Yes, sir. I work in a toy shop where we make toys for underprivileged children.
Anything else? Anything else?
The courses I had, I took a course in graphic arts.
Thank you, Mr. Hosford. Warden Ambo, is there any comments, remarks, or observations at this time?
No, sir, I don't have any.
Thank you, Warden Ambo. Madam Chairman, I do have a recommendation in this case, and I will share with my fellow board members at the conclusion of this interview.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. We have some folks who are here in support that we'd like to hear from at this time. Could we hear from Mr. Carl Nelson?
Good morning, ma'am.
Go ahead, sir. What would you like us to know?
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You want me to make my statement?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. Pardon me, I couldn't hear. I first met then Petty Officer Hosford in South Vietnam in it was October, November 1970. His position was to perform light maintenance, but primarily as a door gunner on a helicopter gunship. I was then a lieutenant junior grade naval officer and pilot. And when he arrived, I was what was called a flyer team leader. I was in charge of both helicopters and crews tactically. Our mission was to support Navy SEALs and river patrol boats, as well as ground forces, both Vietnamese and American, combat support. We carried all the weapon and fuel we could. We didn't have room for passengers or mail or anything like that. And we flew short flights, but it was not unusual for after the end of a tour for people to have 500-600 combat flights in a year. I'm sure that John had that amount as well. Not every door gunner that we had came down, made it, cut the mustard. Only the best made it. We happened to be in a detachment remote from the home squadron by 150, 200 miles in the most hostile area. And immodestly, we were the most decorated detachment of the most decorated squadron in the Navy. And conditions were austere. We lived off of Amy barges tied together, anchored in the middle of the Coulon River, nightly attacked almost by sappers, concussion grenades going off all night. It was a tough life. You get to know people really well. We had a total of between 8 and 10 officers, depending on the time, and between 8 and 10 air crewmen. And even though we had a military bearing and military relationship, we were very close. We knew each other well. I came to know Petty Officer Hartford well, and he was a gentle, kind man, and he followed orders, and he was an excellent professional. In the past few years in his incarceration, I visited him several times, as you'll probably know. And I found him each time unsolicited, contrite about his offense and what happened. And it's consistently basically that his comment was, I blacked out. I don't remember what happened. But it must have been me, was his comment. I haven't heard the story in detail like Mr. Roche just elicited before, but he was contrite each time I was there. It seems to me, again, in my judgment of character, and that Mr. Hosford would be, even though 76 years old, he's got some contributions he could give to society. I think he's a good man and a good human being. I would hate to be judged for all of my life for the worst 15 minutes of my life. And it seems to me that he could contribute and be a good citizen. The Seawolf Squadron is very, very close. And I know that we're like a brotherhood, and we would provide support and then some, better than a family. I ask that you render a decision that he be considered for pardon. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Mr. Nelson. We also have Mr. Michael Dodson. Go ahead, Mr. Dodson. Go ahead, sir. Can you hear us? Mr. Dodson? Okay, he seems to have lost his audio, Mr. Dodson has. I have the parole project. Is Mr. Hosford will be a client of the parole project, Mr. Myers?
Yes, Mr. Nasa, he will be.
While we're waiting on Mr. Dodson, we'll cue him in when he gets in. We'd like to go ahead and listen to the others who've indicated they'd like to speak. We have joining us by Zoom, sister to the victim. Would you go ahead and like to make your statement? No. Yeah, she's Miss Carol. Can you? We'd like to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
I am.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm here today. I want to represent my sister, Yvonne Elaine Hosford, and her eldest son, Clifton, who is developmental delayed and legally blind. The man who brutally murdered my sister and was convicted of this crime wants to be a free man. I hope and pray every day that this will never happen. In a way, as calmly as I could, I discussed a condensed version of this with Cliff. He was silent for a while, and then he started crying and asked me if he would have to go live with him if he gets out of prison. I assured him and I told him in no uncertain terms that he never had to be afraid because I would make sure that would never happen. Clifton always keeps his mother alive for him and myself because he always talks about her, the things they did, the things they said, and the things they liked. Cliff's best and almost only friend he had was his mom, and John Hosford took that away from him forever. Cliff would still be living with his mom and being taken care of by his mom if it was not for John Hosford murdering her. and forever leaving him to be taken care of by other family members for the rest of his life. I watched my mother in the first year that this happened, aged 10 years, watching her take custody of her daughter's 4 children and raising them at her age of 60 years old at that time. It was a hard struggle for her, but she was determined to do it for her daughter, Elaine, and her grandchildren. Elaine was my sister. Everyone called her Elaine. I loved her so very much, and I miss her every day of this past 34 years. Every time something good would happen for her kids, I would be so happy for them and also very angry that my sister was not there to be happy with them. John Hosford has never to this day apologized to his children for murdering their mother. John has always been in a structured environment. As a child and a young adult, he lived with his parents. Then he went into the Navy for most of his adult life, where he was also structured. Then into Angola prison for the last almost 34 years for the brutal murder of my sister, where he has also been structured. He was left alone to make a decision on his own when, in a fit of rage, he murdered my sister. So I'm hoping you can see, as I do, that John needs to stay in his structured environment, which is Angola prison, for the rest of his life. He took my sister's and Cliff's mom from us for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We're sharing for. We have also phone Stacy Nielsen.
Hi,
Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
all right. I am the daughter of Elaine Nilsson, for whom I am here to represent today. I have been hesitant to speak here today because I had to once before face John Hosford, my father, in court by testifying against him when I was 11. Still just seems like yesterday. It will be 34 years on December 16th. My 3 brothers and I were present at the residence when John Hosford viciously attacked and mutilated the most amazing woman who meant everything to us. It was I and my brother Wayne who were called as witnesses to the brutal murder of her mom. John Hosford was found guilty of second-degree murder and was convicted by a jury to serve a life sentence without the benefit of parole, probation, or suspension of sentence. This is now the 3rd hearing in the past 7 years. These last 7 years have been a constant, recurring nightmare of what I have tried to put behind me. My brothers and I have struggled in various aspects of our lives since the day our mother was taken from us. It has been very difficult. My mom has missed out on so much in our lives, as we have also missed out so much with her. How can John Hosford claim to be rehabilitated if he has never admitted that he himself was the intruder? He has never taken responsibility for his actions. He has never shown any kind of remorse. He has never been sympathetic or even apologetic. John Hosford has never shown any of these emotions. Instead, he so fabricates the story of another man, which he cannot describe one detail of. By the hands of my father, my mom's life was taken away, so his freedom should be taken away from him for life. Please think about the torture that John Hosford inflicted on my mother that night. My mom was viciously beaten and stabbed. She defended herself as long as she could until he slit her throat. According to autopsy, she lost about 60% of her blood supply. Only took about 20 minutes for her to bleed out and die. And that's when John Oshford then forced my brother Wayne to carry her lifeless body out to the van, where he proceeded to try to stuff her body underneath the back seat like she was garbage. She wouldn't fit, so he threw her over into the couch. At one point, she rolled off the couch and unwrapped from the tablecloth she was rolled in. That is when I saw how bad she was and knew she was gone. There are so many horrific images that will never escape me. I truly believe that if Wayne had not been able to flag down a cop that night, that I nor my brothers would have survived. John Oshford had no intentions of going to the hospital. So I urge you to please consider the decision you're about to make and how it will yet again affect the victims involved. Please try to understand my feelings and the fear that I face. It is imperative that John Oshford stay in prison to serve out the sentence he was given. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Nielsen, for your remarks on that. It took a lot of courage for you to speak to us this morning. We have here with us in Baton Rouge, Mr. Donald Orr, who would like to speak in opposition.
Members of the board, the Louisiana Board of Department of Parole. My name is Donald Orr. I'm a proud native of Baton Rouge, 44-year resident of the state of Kansas. I'm a 43-year veteran of law enforcement, getting my career as a correctional officer in the state penitentiary in Dover. Retiring in April of 2021 as police chief in Kansas City Metro. Traveled to Louisiana from Kansas to speak with you today to represent the family of Yvonne Elaine Hoster, true victim here. I feel it's important that you know who Yvonne was to me personally. Yvonne Elaine Hoster was my aunt. However, she was more like my big sister. To me, after my own mom, Ron Ford, I'm sorry, was killed by a drunk driver here in Baton Rouge in 1971. My aunt was named after my mom. She was very special. I apologize. Truly goes without saying just how frustrated our family has been that we are once again working to keep the state of Louisiana from releasing the man who murdered Yvonne. We have been protesting this action since 2015 by making phone calls and submitting letters of objection to both the governor and the parole. However, today I stand in front of you personally to object to any form of clemency for John Hoster to represent our family, specifically Yvonne's children, the other victims in this case. You see, we as a family do not understand the fact that we were told by the court system after John Hoster was convicted by a jury of murdering Yvonne that he would never be released. We were told that life means life in the state of Louisiana. As a kid, I remember that being said. To make this horrifying situation even worse, in 1989, two of John Hoster's children, aged 11 and 14, were forced to testify at his trial about the day the mother was brutally murdered while they were instructed to stay in the van parked in the driveway. They testified to the screams coming from inside their home while the father, John Hoster, slashed and stabbed his mother to death. I want to emphasize right now, not slashed and stabbed to death by an unknown intruder, but slashed and stabbed to death by John Hoster. This murder occurred December in 1988, just days before Christmas. As a nation, we certainly should stand up and defend all victims of violent crime. This was extremely horrific, violent murder, which definitely affected the lives of many people, but far more than anyone, the lives of three of Yvonne's children who continue today to have to worry and wonder if their father will one day be able to walk out of prison after committing the unimaginable. I say three children because Wayne Hoster, the 14-year-old son who was forced by John Hoster to help him wrap his mother's dead nude body in a tablecloth and carry it out to the vehicle. He was killed in 2009 during military combat in Afghanistan, which we read history in too. During my extensive law enforcement career, I've investigated many crimes against children. I was a police detective for 16 years. I have never investigated one that placed children in such a horrible and terrifying situation as this case. In regard to Yvonne's adult children, I know personally that her only daughter, Michelle, has much apprehension and fear of her father being released from prison. This is not an agony that she should have to live with even after all these years. She does not want to see her father released. Not only do they have to live with the continued trauma of being the victim of losing their mother to a murder, but then the system continues to victimize them with the allowance of this man to attempt to gain his freedom back. It's simply not okay, and our judicial system cannot stand for it. Again, we all struggle as family members of Yvonne Hosford as to why the state of Louisiana would ever consider releasing a man that brutally murdered another human being. And even more shocking to us, to our knowledge, John Hosford, we've heard, has never accepted responsibility for his actions, having no remorse for what he did in murdering his wife and the mother of his 4 children. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today, but I do want to leave you with one last request from our family. As you sit here today and consider a clemency for John Hosford, please also consider the fact that the sweet lady that he, not an unknown intruder, he brutally stabbed to death and lies in a grave out at Green Oak Cemetery next to my mom. Please think of Yvonne Hosford, what she endured at the hands of John Hosford on that horrific day in 1988, and to continue just as she deserves. Please consider her children who live with the memories and trauma of this every day, even though they're adults. Let justice be served and keep John Hosford where he belongs in prison for the rest of his life.
Thank you, sir. Did we get Mr. Michael Dodson? Before we go to the VA's office, we'd like to hear from Mr. Michael Dodson, who I understand has joined us. Mr. Dodson? Mr. Dodson, can you hear us? All right. Well, it looks like we're still having some audio issues, so we'll move on to the district attorney's office. Ms. Barbera.
Good morning, Chairman Renata. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you this morning. You know, I've watched a lot of these hearings, and I've watched a lot of decisions made by the members of the Pardon Board. And although I have opposed many of them and not necessarily agreed with all the decisions, I have seen why the board made the decision that it made. However, the man that spoke with you just a few minutes ago has shown little to no remorse, zero accountability. He has blamed the victim. I know we are deciding this case based upon this individual. However, comparing them to some of the others who have expressed their deep regret for what they did, totally acknowledged what they did, accepted 110% accountability. It is amazing to me that this man can continue to lie to the members of the board. And I think even more amazing to me is we went through this several years ago. Although he may not have had any contact with his children, he could hear or see the impact that he has had on them, for them growing up without a mother, for witnessing those horrific acts. And I know that this board is not just considering the underlying facts of the offense, but it is what he has done in prison. And he continued in post-conviction to lie and act like the intruder did all this. But again, in these hearings, the last hearing, he has heard what this has done to his children. The previous recommendation was made. Governor Edwards denied this. On April 16th of 2017, Governor Edwards said, no, you are going to spend the rest of your life in jail. Yes, he had 4 years to reapply, and sure as heck, here we are, 4 years and 24 days after he was eligible, he reapplied. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it, that if he truly had remorse for what he did, he would not continue to subject his children to this type of hearing. Accept responsibility for what you did, spend the rest of your life in the Department of Corrections. But I cannot believe he continues to do this to his children. And we ask that you please do not recommend any further relief to the governor for this man. Thank you.
At this time, we'll ask Mr. Hosford, is there a statement you'd like to make before we turn it over to Mr. Nordyke? Mr. Hosford?
Yes, ma'am. As I've tried to, I'm extremely sorry for what I did. But I was, as I said, I blacked out. I don't know exactly. I killed my wife. I was trying to get her to the hospital. I know it has messed my children's lives up. And I was planning to, I'd worked for years saving, getting ready so I could provide my children with a good education. They were taken halfway across the country and hid out. I didn't have any contact. I didn't know where they were at. And till eventually they made contact with me. And we had communication for a while till I lost the communications. I don't know, but I tell them I'm deeply sorry for what I did. And but I was
Yes, sir. Mr. Nordyke.
Thank you. John Hosford was one of the most decorated and enlisted men in the entire Vietnam War, in a squadron that garnered more recognition and more honors than any other squadron. He is 76. He will not be eligible to reapply until he's after age 81. And for what it's worth, he did receive a unanimous recommendation from the prior board under Governor Jindal. He's a Class A trustee. He's been a Class A trustee for 26 or 27 years. He's been write-up free for at least the same amount of time, and only 3 write-ups total. He has not taken a lot of the courses that you have come to expect, but he is enrolled in those courses, and I've talked to classification about him. He's backlogged for those courses. Were the board to grant, he would take those courses between now and the parole hearing that would happen. This is essentially his last chance. He has a transition plan. He has incredible support. I've been doing this a long time, and the Seawolf community that fell in and supported him has been incredible. I have never experienced anything like the national outpouring of support I get from officers and enlisted men he served with. I get calls routinely from across the nation from officers and enlisted people that served with him. I've actually become fairly good friends with some of them over the last 6 years. He has given back because of his contributions to the toy shop. He's done that on his own time. I want to talk just a little bit about this intruder thing. I represented him 6 years ago, and I can tell you, I never heard about the restraining order 6 years ago, and I thought I had gone pretty deeply into the record at that point. So today was the first time I heard about the restraining order, Mr. Roche. I don't doubt it's there. I just never heard about it before today. The intruder issue, I know that that was in the trial. I've read the decision, the court decision, and I know that he alleged the intruder. And I'm guessing, frankly, that that was just the way his brain had to deal with the horrible thing that happened, is to come up with an intruder. But the intruder wasn't there 6 years ago. And it wasn't there at the hearing 6 years ago. John said, I did it. I killed her. I committed the homicide. It was awful, and I did it. That intruder showed back up today, and it showed back up in the application. And I'm not sure where that came from, except perhaps he's aging, and perhaps there's something that made that come back out. But I can tell you that he has taken responsibility, and he's done it with me personally many years ago. And he's done it 6 years ago in the hearing, 5, 6 years ago in the hearing. I would ask this board to consider his service, to consider the things he's done, and give him a shot at freedom in his last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nordike. All right, I think we're prepared to vote. We'll start with Mr. Rosedale.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Hospital. First of all, I think that you have lost all touch with reality. In your statement, when you were arrested in 1988, you also mentioned the intruder. When you were arrested and interrogated by police department. A prime example is that when asked the question on your application that you just submitted, now question number 5, were there victims in your crimes? You said yes. There were 4 victims. Were they relatives? Were they related? Yes, my children. Ages 8, 10, 14, and 15. You didn't even recognize your wife as a victim when you applied for a commutation of sentence this time. It seems to me that you seem to even recognize that Bonnie Lane Hospital existed. Because as late as this application, you didn't recognize your wife as a victim. 1 second. That is a prime example of your ability not to take responsibility for your actions. You premeditatedly murdered your wife. Reasons that are not known because you don't remember. There have only been 26 recommendations by this board since I've been sitting on this board 7 years. There's only been 26 recommendations that have been outright denied by Governor John Bell Edwards. We have made 642 recommendations. Of that, only 26 have been denied by the governor because the governor and his staff considered it to be the worst of the worst. According to the victim's family, Governor Jindal also denied your request in a letter to the family dated January 8th, 2016. You've had at least 3 or 4 bites of the apple. Do I think you deserve another bite at that apple? I think not. Based upon victim opposition, based upon a lack of responsibility for your actions, based upon a lack of rehabilitative program, based upon opposition of the law enforcement community, opposition from the DA's office, my vote is going to be, and recommendation is to deny your request. All the above reasons. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Hosford, first off, let me say I want to commend you for your service to our country. Mr. Nordyke's comments did not fall on deaf ears. I appreciate what you've done in your life. You've done well while you've been in prison. I understand that there may be a lot of reasons why you can't come to grips with what you did. You know, one of the factors that we consider is the crime itself. I think we get who the person is today. It bothers me that you still haven't accepted complete responsibility for what you did. I'm not sure why that is. In this particular case, crime was so horrific, and your inclusion of your children in that crime is just something I can't overlook. Your children have suffered from the moment this happened, and they continue to suffer every time this thing comes back up again. I just believe the nature of the crime, how it was committed, and what you did in those circumstances afterwards, in addition to all of the other reasons, law enforcement opposition, victim opposition, my vote likewise is to deny.
Mr. Freeman.
I also would like to thank you for your service, but I'd also like to thank the victims for showing up today and testifying to this event, making us at least try to feel what you felt at that time. I can tell it's terrible, and we will never, hopefully never feel it. And due to the DA's statement and victims' opposition and very little remorse from the defendant, I vote to deny.
Jack. Osford. It takes a special kind of person to be able to take the life of your wife in the way that you did, and to subject you. I can't even imagine all of the kids felt having to ride around in that van, fighting with your mom, you know, and of your son not in the back window frantically trying to get the attention of law enforcement. Who knows what would have happened? And the thing that I see often, I've known been on board a long time, but what I see often is people who have done these particularly egregious crimes, instead of working on themselves, they work on technical programs, they learn how to fix things or repair things, but not to fix and repair themselves.
And you haven't made any effort in the whole time that you've been there to address what it is about you that would have enabled you to commit this really, really atrocious crime. I mean, being able to fix stuff is great, but it's not enough to address your psychological, mental, and emotional issues, and you've done no work on that. You've got a lot of work that you need to do in that arena. But because of your lack of remorse and acceptance of responsibility, the adamant opposition from the victim's family, the attorney, and your lack of meaningful programs, my vote today is denied.
All right, Mr. Hosford, you received 4 votes to deny your application. Today, sir, your application for clearance has been denied. I want to thank everybody who participated.
Thank you.
That's it.
Now, this commutation hearing wasn't the classic, wasn't just the, I don't know what is. I mean, you have Mr. O'Shea who pays attention to every single detail. There's something unique about the way his mind works, but also the effort that he puts into every case that is his. We've heard him say before that he will study a packet for over a week. He will look at, and he had it. I mean, even, the DA missed it. Even his own attorney missed it, that he put in his application packet that his wife wasn't even a victim. And he lays down the hammer, and you have the mic drop from Miss Jackson talking about there at the end how who knows what would have happened. And she just paints the picture of his poor son, his little child son. And we'll go through the facts of the case. Waving down the police, getting the police officer's attention, because who knows if that didn't happen, what would have happened. And now I thought Nordyke, his attorney, you come in as an attorney not expecting, not really knowing that this is going to happen. That although he should have read the application, you might argue, just 5 months ago that he puts in the application that it was someone else. And maybe Nordyke's right. Maybe he is at his age in some type of denial and some type of, but it's hard to really wrap your mind around that because, again, he didn't even list his wife as a victim. And you have this mixture of him being, I don't know if it's true, the attorney states one of the highest decorated men in Vietnam. I don't know if that's an exaggeration or not. And you have my favorite DA, Tracy, come down there with just the facts, which is, we say this quite often where those come in and say, oh, I'm remorseful, I'll do anything. And it's like, well, if you're so remorseful, your kids are suffering. Your kids are coming here to say, no, we don't want you out. If you're truly remorseful, that would be the purest form of repentance. And she even said thank you there at the end. And you realize what's happening here. It's not about keeping a man who today is 78 years old, who his attorney said, look, this is probably his last chance. It's not about being spiteful and about saying, no, you have to spend the rest of your life in prison. It's about the victims not wanting him out. It's about that justice being seen through. People are coming here and standing behind the victims, these little children, and to think that one of the children were disabled, that they lost their caregiver. It's hard to understand, and I want to give a special thank you to Richard, who doesn't miss anything. I did this hearing when it first came out when I first started this channel, I didn't have the unpacking that we're going to go through it. And he said, man, dude, he marked it in the spreadsheet. He's like, you should do this one again. And I'm happy that I listened to him, because this is a classic. And I know that I miss my No Way Roche, and I think a lot of you do too. Let's go over this document, which is his appeal. And let's see what it says in here. So during the early evening hours on December 16, 1988, the victim was murdered in her North Baton Rouge home located on St. Lawrence Drive. At the time, her husband, the defendant, was in the Navy and was on leave. I didn't realize he was on leave. That evening, the defendant was going to take their 4 children to a bonfire and barbecue at his mother's house in Tikva. The victim was not going with them. The children arrived home from school between 2:30 and 3:30 that afternoon. At approximately 4 p.m., the children got into the van and the victim told them goodbye. So she seems pretty cordial, right? She's sending them off to go do that. She went back inside the house and became engaged in a conversation with the defendant. This conversation evolved into an argument. 2 of the children, Wayne and Brad, became hungry and went into the kitchen to fix some sandwiches. While inside, Wayne heard the defendant and the victim talking about a divorce. Shortly thereafter, Wayne and his sister heard the sound from inside the house, which sounded like someone being hit with a belt, followed by the victim saying twice, "Stop, Farrell." When Wayne, Brad, and Michelle went inside, they saw the defendant on his knees wiping up blood with his t-shirt. The defendant explained that he had knocked out a tooth and told the children to go back in with the van, which they did. This sounds so different than what we just heard. I'm quite confused. A few minutes later, the defendant came outside, opened the rear of his van, retrieved the toolbox, placed a file in his pocket, and returned to the house. When Michelle tried to go back in the house, she found the door locked. At this point, Wayne and Michelle heard the victim say, "I never loved you, I never will, and God help me." Subsequently, Hosford called Wayne into the house and told him not to look at his mother's face. He stated that she had tripped and hurt herself. When okay, so this is not the killing. This is just the incident leading up to it. When the defendant turned on the lights, Wayne observed the victim lying on top of the dining room table. Her body was covered in a tablecloth. No, this is the killing. Okay. It's so interesting because like the way that he talked about it, it was like a night and dark, and the defendant instructed Wayne to grab her feet, and together they carried her to the van, whereupon the defendant tried to stuff the victim underneath the rear seat. The defendant also tried, I mean, think about this again, like why his kids are, he did this with his kids outside and then he made them help. It's such a different level. I forgot to mention that too. Remember what's also strange in 2017, how the parole board, the commutation board, unanimously granted him. And then the governor said no, which is not something we see every day. And isn't that interesting? Now, it could have been because of the family members put pressure on the governor, because you see active family members involved in an active DA. But isn't it interesting how you get a unanimous in 2017 and then a unanimous no 5-6 years later? Anyways, the defendant also tried to close the rear doors of the van while the victim's arms dangled outside. You can just picture it. It's so vivid reading about this. The defendant then threw the victim onto the rear seat and drove away. He tried to get the children to take some sleeping pills, but they refused. Can you imagine? And was it Miss Jackson that said, who knows what would have happened had he succeeded in getting them to do that? Near the intersection of Hooper and Jor Roads, Wayne flagged down Deputy Sheriff William Sutton. Deputy Sutton activated his emergency lights and motioned to the defendant to pull over. The defendant informed the deputy that the victim had been hurt and that he needed to get her to a hospital. Deputy immediately escorted the defendant to Long Hospital. At the hospital, the victim was pronounced dead. On arrival, shortly thereafter, the defendant was arrested. When investigators, so he's quickly reacting. When his son flags down the police officer, he said, oh, she's hurt. We need a hospital. When investigators arrived at the crime scene, they discovered evidence that someone had attempted to clean up a large amount of blood. They found blood-soaked clothes and towels, plastic bags containing items soaked with blood and water, a blood-stained mop in the bathroom lavatory, and a plastic bucket in the bathtub. Although the defendant's buck knife scabbard was found on the kitchen countertop, the knife itself was never recovered. Talking about a scabbard being recovered, that's from the Idaho murder case, right? They found his scabbard. To his, I think also, I think it was a Marine. Was it a K10 knife or something? K1 knife. At the trial, the defendant explained that an unarmed intruder broke into the house and attacked the victim. He testified that he heard something fall, went to investigate, and saw someone struggling with the victim. According to the defendant, the inside of the house was dark, and he saw only an outline of the attacker. The defendant claims that he fought with the unknown intruder and forced him to flee out the back door. The defendant testified that he was unable to carry the victim to the van and called Wayne to help him do so. He also explained that he was trying to drive to the hospital, but he got lost. Both the defendant and his sister testified that the defendant had scratches on his face and arms resulting from the defendant's cutting firewood and wood for the bonfire. However, both Wayne and Michelle testified that they did not observe such scratches on the defendant while they arrived home from school that afternoon. They also testified that they did not hear any dogs barking when the victim was stabbed through, although their 3 dogs and the neighbor's dog always barked at strangers. So, as you can see, I mean, the idea that he makes up the story, the only thing one can think about is that he's lost his mind. And it was interesting hearing from his attorney saying, I never heard this, and I represented him last time. His buddy from the Navy said, I never heard this. And I do believe that they never heard it. You know, you might say maybe he's losing it, but hey, maybe you blame it on the attorney for not, doing the application process with him. I don't know. But even had he taken responsibility, I do wonder. The photographs were probative and certain facts necessary to verdict was rendered because a manslaughter conviction was possible. They sent the number of wounds tended to negate the killing of the why is my phone making noises? I put it on silent. I'll put the link to this in the description. What was the other? Oh, he had different in trial. He had different approaches to this. Let's see. He said the victim did not. So I think he was saying the victim took her own life. Or an unknown intruder when a case involves circumstantial evidence. I don't know. But how do you feel about this? I think for me it's easy just because the children don't want it. If the children don't want it and the victims don't want it, it's why do you reward and punish them again, make them victims again? So there you have it. If you want me to go back to more of the old school hearings, we have plenty more. We have spreadsheets with all the information. Let me know in the comment section or send me an email, and I'll keep doing them because I know I miss them. And with that, I'll let you go.